It started with a simple, familiar exchange. One of those lines that feels like coming home for anyone who grew up watching classic television. "How've you been, Doc?" A quiet, everyday greeting that somehow carried the soul of an entire town. For fans of Gunsmoke, moments like that weren't just dialogue. They were memories. Comfort. Family. But years later, one tiny, forgotten moment from the show surfaced and quietly changed the way many people looked at that world. It wasn't a dramatic gunfight. It wasn't a shocking plot twist. It was something small. Almost invisible. And that's what made it powerful. In one scene, Marshal Matt Dillon walks through Dodge City, exchanging tense words with Doc and keeping an eye on a drifter who's clearly trouble. Everything feels normal. Dust in the air. Boots on wood. That familiar slow burn tension that made Gunsmoke different from other westerns. And then, just for a heartbeat, something strange happens. A crew member, hidden behind a post, shifts too late. He's there for only a second. The camera keeps rolling. No cut. No fix. Back in the early 1970s, most people never noticed. Television screens were small, blurry, soft around the edges. That tiny mistake passed unnoticed for decades. But in today's world of HD restorations and internet forums, nothing stays hidden. Somebody paused it. Somebody zoomed in. And suddenly, a moment that slipped through the cracks became famous. At first, people laughed. A harmless blooper. A fun catch. But the more fans looked at it, the more it felt like something else. Less like a mistake, and more like a window into what was really happening behind the scenes. By that point, Gunsmoke had been running for almost 20 years. That's 20 years of long days, endless scripts, rushed shoots, and constant pressure. Budgets were shrinking. Schedules were tighter. People were tired in ways television never shows. James Arness, the man behind Matt Dillon, was carrying pain most viewers never knew about. He wasn't just acting toughness. He was living through it. Years before Hollywood, he had been a soldier. Wounded badly in World War II, he carried pieces of that war in his body for the rest of his life. Arthritis. Old shrapnel. Pain that flared with long hours under hot studio lights. Some days, standing was hard. Walking was harder. And yet, there he was. Show after show. Year after year. Never asking for special treatment. Never using pain as an excuse. He stood tall because that's what Matt Dillon did. Crew members noticed the truth, though. Early mornings were easier for him. As the day wore on, his limp grew more visible. His energy faded. So they adjusted. Shot his scenes in clusters so he could rest more between filming days. Not because he demanded it, but because everyone could see the cost. So when that blooper slipped through, it wasn't laziness. It wasn't incompetence. It was exhaustion. Real, human exhaustion. Behind the steady camera work and carefully lit saloons were people running on caffeine, deadlines, and sheer willpower. Sometimes you miss a shadow. Sometimes you miss a movement in the background. Not because you don't care, but because you're trying to survive another long day. And James Arness wasn't carrying that world alone. Amanda Blake, who played Miss Kitty, carried her own quiet battles. On screen, she was strength dressed in silk and steel. A woman who could run a saloon and hold her own in a man's world. Off-screen, she fought just as hard to keep her place. Their chemistry was something viewers felt more than saw. No grand love scenes. No dramatic confessions. Just looks. Pauses. The way they stood near each other. A love story that lived in silence because saying it out loud would have broken the delicate balance of the show. They joked about it in real life. About Matt and Kitty finally settling down somewhere with a little farm and a normal life. But they understood why it never happened. That tension was the heartbeat of the series. When Glenn Strange, who played Sam the bartender, passed away, something changed forever. The laughter behind the scenes faded. the set felt emptier. Amanda Blake left soon after. Not because she didn't love the show, but because the soul of it felt different without her friend. Milburn Stone, who played Doc, pushed himself back to work even after a heart attack. Dennis Weaver created Chester's limp just to make the character feel unique, then paid for it physically later in life. Ken Curtis shaped Festus' voice from people he remembered as a child. These weren't just actors. They were people pouring real parts of themselves into a fictional town. And as the years went on, the losses grew. Illness. Fatigue. Friends leaving or passing away. The shadow of cancellation creeping closer. When CBS canceled Gunsmoke in 1975, there was no celebration. No goodbye. No warning. One day it was there, and the next, it was gone. After 20 years. After hundreds of episodes. After becoming part of people's lives. The cast found out like everyone else, through industry papers. That kind of ending hurts more than any dramatic farewell. It wasn't just a professional loss. It felt like being erased. But the story didn't completely die. Years later, reunion films brought the characters back one by one. Older. Wiser. Carrying the weight of time in their eyes. Each one felt like a quiet thank you to the audience, and a gentle closing of a door that had stayed open for decades. That tiny blooper became something else over time. It stopped being funny and started feeling symbolic. A man stepping out from behind a post too late. A camera that didn't cut. A tired editor who didn't notice. It was real life showing through fiction for just a second. And that's why fans love it. Not because it proves the show was sloppy, but because it proves it was human. Behind every polished performance were aching joints. Behind every perfect shot were people who hadn't slept enough. Behind every calm walk through Dodge City was a man fighting pain with quiet dignity. James Arness once said that Gunsmoke wasn't just a show. It was a life. And you can feel that when you watch it, even now. You can feel it in the slow pacing. The thoughtful dialogue. The way characters look at each other, as if they've lived real lives before the camera ever started rolling. That one unedited moment doesn't ruin the magic. It deepens it. It reminds us that legends aren't made by perfection. They're made by people who show up even when it hurts. Even when they're tired. Even when they don't know if anyone will notice. Maybe that's why, when people freeze that single frame today, they don't see a mistake. They see effort. Friendship. Pain. Dedication. They see a town that was never real, brought to life by people who were. And maybe that's why Gunsmoke still lives, even now. So in your heart, does that tiny blooper make the show feel more alive? Or does it pull you out of the story? That question is part of what keeps legends alive long after the camera stops rolling. If you want, I can also shorten it. Make it more emotional. Or optimize it for YouTube audience language. Just tell me.